Hi, welcome to this installment of The Effective Executive. Today we're going to talk about character. What is character? Character is who you are, what you do when you think no one is looking. It's the reality of your life. It is the natural state of your being. It's true that there are those who will behave a particular way when they think that no one is looking, and in another way when they're around people of influence or people to whom they are trying to influence. But then you have people who are who they are, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of where they are or who they're with. What you see is what you get, kind of thing. And if that's you, that's really the person I want to talk to right now. I want to talk with the individual who is as real as they get. Because you have to ask yourself this one question. If I am who I am, I have to decide whether or not the reality of myself, what you see is what you get, is effective for leadership or ineffective for leadership. Now, what we all want to do is we all want to sort of pat ourselves on the back and say, well, I'm a great guy or I'm a great gal. But you know what the reality is? Your character is not really determined by what you think. What you think about yourself is grossly irrelevant in comparison to what others around you think. Your character is attributed to you by people around you. So what happens is we come into leadership positions and we lead and we do things the way we do things, and we have a tendency, there's this temptation within our human nature to sort of blame our upbringing or our personality on who we are. We like to say, well, I am the way I am because that's how I was raised, or I am the way I am because this is what I was taught. I have reactions to things or body language or I use words or I use language or my temperament is all built on my upbringing. Character is a culmination of a repetition of choices that we make every single day. Choices. Our upbringing and our personality has nothing to do with the choices that we make even today. So in leadership, we have to decide whether or not the choices that we're making is effective or ineffective for leadership. And for some, the choices that they make is highly ineffective for leadership. There are two things that define leadership, that define character. The first is trust. If we are a leader and we don't have trust of our people, we have nothing. So let me define trust for you in just two words. One is transparency. If we are the kind of leader who is transparent, meaning we are open with our people, there's nothing that we hide, then we build the trust with the people. But there's another thing about transparency that I think is very important for us to understand. And that is sometimes in our organizations, in our leadership context, changes have to take place. And those changes have to take place for various reasons. But sometimes those changes have to take place because of a poor choice that we have made or a character flaw on our part as the leader. A transparent leader will adhere to those changes, but also will claim and own the failures on his or her part to say this is why the change has to take place. Unfortunately, there's a lot of leaders who recognize a change that has to take place within their leadership context, but will blame everybody else other than themselves. When a group of followers begin to understand that that's who their leader is, they don't trust that leader. The second thing about trust is integrity. And I don't know that we have to spend a whole lot of time on integrity, but I will say this, that as I am beginning this 6-session series on the effective executive, I include character first, because if you don't have character, if you don't have a positive, influential character, and you don't have integrity that goes along with that, you have nothing. You can master every leadership style out there. You can master every competency that goes under those leadership styles. But if you don't have integrity, you have nothing. So character is, first of all, about trust. The second thing that character is about is admiration. You see, leadership is positive influence. It is our job to influence people positively in order to get things done in the organizations that we run. And part of admiration is there's two words that I'm going to throw out there. One is positivity and one is inspirational. And so let me talk about positivity, but I want to talk to you about positivity from a somewhat negative perspective. And here's what I mean by that. I'm going to tell you a little story of something that happened to me when I was 15 years old. My dad was a pastor of a church, and I was a part of the youth group at 15 years old. We had a solid youth group with a really good guy who was our youth leader, but he had a character flaw. A character flaw that pushed a lot of people away, including myself. He had this tendency about him to sort of insult people as a way to show his affection, I suppose. He would undermine you, or if you said something, he would insult you and laugh and get a good chuckle out of everybody. And I suppose for a little while it wasn't bad, but after a while it started to be painful to the point where I didn't want to be around the guy. And so I had gone to another individual who was a part of that group, and I had pulled her aside and I had said, "Hey, I want to confide in you with something. I'm not really sure how to deal with this, but here is our leader, and I don't want to be around him. When I see him coming, I want to go the other direction because he's offensive. He cracks jokes at my expense, and not just mine, but other people. And maybe I'm being petty, maybe I'm being too thin-skinned, but after a while, it just weighs on you, and I just don't see him as a leader. I don't want to follow him." And her response was this. She says, "Mike, you're just going to have to understand that that's who he is. That's his personality. That's who he is. And I'm going to be honest with you, that did not settle well with me. That's not what I wanted to hear." I don't know how much of the Bible you read, but there's a passage of scripture in the Bible, and I believe it's Proverbs 29:18, and it says, "Like arrows in the hands of a madman is one who would deceive or hurt his neighbor and say, 'I was only kidding. I was just joking.'" Think about that for a minute. Imagine firing an arrow into the back of someone, and then when they protest it, you say, "Hey man, I was just kidding." It doesn't take away the pain. The pain is still there. The wound, the damage is still done. And sometimes what folks want to do is they want to be offensive. They want to hurt other people in a jokingly manner and say, "Man, I was just kidding. Lighten up. Take a joke." You know what? Maybe we need to learn to take jokes a little bit more from time to time, but too much is too much. We need to be positive, which is another story I want to tell you about inspirational. Fast forward from that time in my life to many years later, maybe 10 years later, when I was about 25 years old, I was working for an organization, and we had a softball team, and we played on a softball league. One of the players on our team was not very good. He would get up to bat, he would strike out quite often, or if he was out in the field, he would miss catches or miss balls that were coming at him. And he struggled with that, and he knew that he wasn't really that good. Well, one time we were playing this other team, and on this team was a man named Joel, and I will never forget Joel's name because of what I'm about to tell you. Joel was one of the most uplifting and inspirational people I had met up to that point in my life. You see, when we were out on the field playing, and my teammate would get up to bat and strike out, this guy on the other team would yell into him and say, "Hey, man, that was a nice swing. That was a good try." If he was out in the field and he missed a ball, he went to catch a ball, he would dive. Joel would yell out, "Hey man, that was a nice try. Good dive. Next time you'll get it." At the end of that particular game, my coworker, he was a coworker, but we were on the same team. We were walking to the car, and he says, "I'm going to tell you something. That Joel is such an encourager." He says, "I want to be around him all the time." You see, this is the difference between good leadership and bad leadership. The character that we possess ought to cause people to want to be around us. We ought to be influencers. We ought to be encouragers. We ought to find ways, even in the course of someone's failure, to encourage them. I have a thing that I teach when I talk about framing success. We talk about assurance, and not just assurance, not just cheerleading somebody, but providing factual inspiration. Factual inspiration. We need to be people who inspire the people around us. Positive. Make people feel better about themselves having been in your presence than not having been in your presence. Encourage people. Be inspirational, even in their failures. Make them want to do better. Hey, thanks for being with me today. Next time, we're going to talk about some more characteristics of leadership. I'm going to call them dispositions. But be a great leader, enjoy the journey, and be inspirational. Have a great day.